it's as good an offer to the sector as possible, really. So that's massively positive. Again, the further education colleges are reporting a really good intake of young people wanting to go and sort of learn the skills in college courses. So if this provides a pipeline for that, then again, we're onto a winner there in terms of that sort of talent identification and finding them roles within industry. A lot to like within this, and let's hope it does what it intends to.
It's not just focused on that gamification perspective. It is those softer skills. And even by the way of collaboration and communication, as long as these tools are used in the right way, I'm talking from a really young age, then it's only going to benefit them.
Peter, in the interest of being inclusive and given the theme of today's episode, I wanted to address the deluge of new young listeners that Construction Disrupted is going to get off the back of this one. So I prepared a short written statement, if you wouldn't mind me delivering that by way of intro. Is that okay?
As political as ever, Ryan. Go for it.
Okay, so, what's good, Peter? Welcome back to Construction Disrupted, everyone. The podcast that has once again entered the group chat with some absolutely unhinged construction industry lore. This week, the sector has really said, let them cook. We've got stories that will allegedly make you feel so optimistic about the sector that when you update the squad, you may sound a little delulu. So lock in, silence the TikTok notifications, and prepare yourselves because this episode is about to go kind of hard. Low key, it might even slap. High key, it might be a full industry banger. Either way, Peter, the construction sector has once again decided to cook, and we are simply here to enjoy the immaculate vibes. That means something apparently to young people. I don't know. So welcome aboard, everyone.
Oh, wow. Hang on 1 second. Yeah, we found effects, by the way. No, you absolutely rinsed that. I think, yeah, hand gestures and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully everybody's fully on board now, and if you sat in the classroom listening, you're in for a good show.
Yeah. So you've not picked it up by now for all of you older folks out there that didn't pick up on my cool youth speak. This is our totally non-patronizing young people into construction special. Just so happens we didn't plan on having a theme, but yeah, a lot of the stories last week focused around this sort of broader theme of new entrants into sector. Some genuinely good news in there as well that we'll get to later on. But yeah, it feels like a cohesive show this week with one particular theme to build around, and that would be it. So yeah, looking forward to this one, Peter.
Yes, so am I, and that was a genuine pleasure to hear you recite that piece of public announcement or youth announcement, should I say? But genuinely, this is all about bringing the next generation into our industry. But before we start, we've had I've been speaking to a few people about how we actually put this podcast together. Because I think people think it's quite easy. You record something and away it goes. It's actually quite a fair bit of work, but there's loads of different tools and tips and techniques that we use to make sure that it's as tight and efficient as possible, because everyone's busy these days. And one of the tools that I always mention is it's actually Adobe Acrobat, but more specifically Adobe Acrobat PDF Spaces. I mean, Adobe Acrobat's known for being a bit dry, dull, and boring in terms of a static PDF that you read and potentially sign, but it's completely changed now as of like the back end of last year, I think. And I use PDF Spaces to collate the news stories we're going to use, and using AI Assistant that's built into Adobe, it actually reads these stories and headlines itself and gives you headlines, show notes, talking points, key stats. Which is really cool, and they've just updated it for this. It even generates its own mini podcast from the actual news stories that you've pulled into your space, and it's shareable. So if you want to have a look at the PDF Spaces, use the link in the show notes, or go to my LinkedIn and there's a bit of a post about it. But it's one thing that I always mention, that partnering with Adobe Acrobat and specifically their PDF Spaces and AI Assistant, it's like I don't think we could do this show on a weekly basis without that. So it's a pretty cool tool.
It sounds like we could do the show with that if we just give it the 3 headlines. My one question would be, will it do patronizing youth speak introductions as part of its service, or is that still human?
I don't know. One thing you can actually do on it though, in all honesty, is you can create your own AI assistant. So there's the general AI assistant, but then you can give it its own prompts. So you could have that patronizing
Oh man, we're
youth
all done for.
speak AI assistant. So coming soon to this podcast, it's yeah, pa- patronization all over the shop, I think.
Oh grief. Oh grief. My days are numbered then. That was the only useful thing I brought to this show, and now that's been taken away from me cruelly.
Oh, I know. You were so close. Snatched at the final hurdle.
Well, shall we get on and I can enjoy my final episode then?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's 5 minutes of us droning on about youth speak, which was hilarious, and me talking about how we put a podcast together, which people haven't really joined to listen. So let's get right into it with the first news story, shall we?
Let's do it.
And this is in PCB today. And like we say, this is all about the next generation and welcoming them into the industry. And good news in that there is actually an employment drive. The government have announced they're creating 200,000 new jobs and apprenticeships for young people. And this is backed by £1 billion worth of investment to help that. What are your thoughts on this first story then?
Well, the first one, it's a positive story. So let me suck the jam out of the donut, so to speak, quite quickly with it. I didn't realize just how bad youth unemployment stats are right now.
Mm,
I feel like I'm going back maybe 20 years now to the phrase NEETs, not in education, employment, or training. But there's just the percentage takeoff figures around that. So there's been a 37% increase in NEETs between 2021 and 2024 to almost 1 million young people that are economically inactive as far as education goes, which is a pretty shocking statistic. And as a slight sidebar, just back to the point on AI, to 24, those stats won't really take into account anything that's predicted to happen with AI affecting the job
mm,
market. So on that kind of my underlying fear is that the stats would be worse once you sort of project out a couple of years and take that into account. And with that, apprenticeship starts down 40% over the last decade as well. So there's kind of a perfect storm of fewer opportunities for a market that clearly needs opportunities. So yeah, thank goodness that something of this scale is being done about it, because 200,000 jobs doesn't close the full gap by any means, but it takes a massive chunk out of that, and it's construction leading the way as far as growth for the economy and providing jobs. So on the face of it, I think it's a massively positive story, but one that is absolutely needed to deliver.
mm. Yeah, and a lot of this is going on subsidizing young people getting roles. Um, the only fly in the soup for me is that there's quite a lot of caveats to some of these subsidiaries, which is a bit, I'm not gonna say disappointing. You need to put caveats in somewhere, but it's almost if we want people to come into our industry, it's like the less barriers, the better. Really, having said that, there's apprenticeships incentives, which is around about £2,000 for each new employee. So that's about 50,000 jobs. Um, jobs guarantee is to be expanded to 18 to 24, which is about 35,000 subsidised jobs. And there's £3,000 for every young person, 18 to 24 again, who's been on universal credit, spent the last 6 months looking for work, and to get them up and rolling. And that's about 60,000 young people. Um, and you start to combine those, it's a fair chunk of people coming into the industry. And if we can skill them in the right ways, and like you said, it doesn't take into account what AI is going to bring, but I would even see that as a positive. We talk about digital natives. I'm not one
Mm.
for grouping age brackets into a certain type, because I think that's just lunacy in a way. But y- y- all these people that are coming in know nothing more than having the internet and being digital and always on, so to speak. And we need that. I'm a bit of a dinosaur, and pencil and pen and paper were my tools when I first joined the industry. I can't even remember if there was an internet back then. It might have been dial up. One for the youth there. But yeah, it's all good if it's done in the right way, and people know about these opportunities as well. One thing that the Federation of Master Builders was saying, and the chief executive Brian Berry had a few sound bites here, uh, which was hugely important in that most of these people will end up in SME builders
Hmm.
and learning their trade rather than diving straight into a tier one or whatever it might be. And it's all about supporting not just the young people coming in, but those small firms so they can employ these people and not feel like they're having to up their prices or they're reducing their margin. Massively important.
Yeah, completely. I think it feels like this really, from looking at the quotes from around the sector, some really positive sentiment towards the potential of these offers, particularly around the levy. I think again, to de-risk the idea of bringing on a young person into a role like this, I think that those cash incentives do help. I think it's hard to see that as anything but positive. The overwhelming sentiment, and it's something that we've touched on, it feels like every week for the last few, is that the main barriers aren't going to be solved by a £3,000 or £2,000 levy, whatever the case may be. It will be, do we have enough certainty in lead generation and what's coming down the track in order to justify the creation of a role? The things I was on a panel last year with the Greater Manchester Chamber of Commerce at their property and construction summit, which was all about this exact topic, and a lot of the stories there were around. There's some horror stories, in fairness, just anecdotal stuff around apprentices being taken on, with the promise of an 18-month, 2-year apprenticeship that would see them trained and then day release for college and so on. And it was mainly a box ticking thing to help to win a place on a particular tender or framework. And then the second that job was complete or that was an unsuccessful bid, then you've got young people left in limbo, and the stress and the mental health impacts of that are they're absolutely profound. So, and again, it's not an easy task for government by any means. We've spoken at length about what's happening in the Middle East at the minute and the implications for that coming on the back of every other economic shock over the last decade. It's easy for people like you and I to say the sector needs certainty, and of course it does, but achieving that might be slightly difficult at the minute. So, yeah, the risk of sounding like I keep sounding like a government apologist for all of these different policies that they're putting in place within construction, and I don't intend to. But I think under the circumstances, this is probably it's as good an offer to the sector as possible, really. So that's massively positive. Again, the further education colleges are reporting a really good intake of young people wanting to go and sort of learn the skills in college courses. So if this provides a pipeline for that, then again, we're onto a winner there in terms of that sort of talent identification and finding them roles within industry. So yeah, a lot to like within this, and let's hope it does what it intends to.
Yeah, just going back to some sound bites from Brian, uh, he actually mentions that it's important that other initiatives get involved. So he specifically mentioned FMB's Academy Pilot and collaborating with CITB and also Shooters Hill Sixth Form College as well. So it's all about that localization, but on a national scale. Which is hugely important. I think those two things combined, that little incentive plus collaboration with local communities, local charities, local schools, and the likes, then it's got a much better chance of succeeding.
Yeah, no, completely. And again, to slightly correct myself, you're absolutely right in what you said earlier that as well as AI, it will have a detrimental effect on lots of roles and will affect these sort of unemployment figures and so on. But also, it's going to create roles as well, and that's something that we need to probably shout about a lot more within the construction sector. Not just yes, we still need practical, hands-on contracting roles, but just as it will affect every other sector, it's affecting ours and will continue to affect ours, and we need to be prepared for that digitization. And you're absolutely right, without wishing to play into stereotypes any more than I did at the start of this episode, of course. Who better than digital natives or young people that just have an innate interest and an innate ability to use these technologies? Yeah, that is something that we should be shouting about. That hopefully some of this money being generated is used to create apprenticeships that are in that lane as well, and not just the on-site roles that we so desperately require. So let's see how it shapes up.
Well, do you know who is shouting about it? It's Louisa Finlay in building.co.uk, which is our next headline. And she's written a piece, short and snappy, but really interesting, about gamification and gaming skills in the next generation shaping modern construction. And the link here is that this week is Open Doors Week as well. For anybody that doesn't know, Open Doors Week, essentially, it is kind of what it says. It's organizations opening their doors to sites and offices to show what the construction industry is all about behind that tarpaulin, behind that barrier, and what the buildings look like internally while they're actually being built, and to encourage the next generation to see these and get inspired by it. Um, but yeah, what's your take on the next generation's gaming skills coming into this industry?
Love it. Absolutely love it. Open Doors Week is something that we've actually been a part of a couple of years back. Obviously, it's Build UK, the organisation behind it, and initially, and totally understandably, a lot of the doors that were being opened, to your point, were those two sites, so people could see the various roles that existed there. And it was something that I thought about, was that there's a lot more to the sector than just the on-site stuff. While that is the
Mm.
most visible, obviously going back to the work I've done with deconstruction and so on. Yeah, we kind of thought, let's be involved in doing that. Let's open the doors to our office and construction marketing as a discipline. To your point, there's lots of other, whether that's a factory, whether it's a builders merchants, there's lots of other literal and metaphorical doors that could also be opened, and that looks like it's happening now with Open Doors, because it has really, really grown. It's got a lot more varied partners involved to do exactly that. And this feels like a really logical next step. I've said for a while that we can't, if we just keep presenting the sector in its easiest kind of, to have to get into semiotics and everything else, but the high vis, hard hat stuff that is literally the most visible part
Yeah.
of the sector to people. Don't be surprised when those are the only connections that people make with it, and therefore think that that's the only type of role available. And if you either just don't fancy that kind of career, or if you're have a disability or something else that means that you are unable to undertake that kind of work, you'd be forgiven for thinking this sector isn't for you. So the more we can talk about roles available now, likely roles available in the future, if we can raise the conversation level, so it's less about roles and tasks, and more about the innate skills involved. I've said it before. My eldest isn't quite old enough for Minecraft and things like that. He's just starting to take an interest now. But having watched the way that he's played with Lego blocks and things previously, and some of the TV shows that he's liked have been, they've had a construction or tech sort of focus to them, and it's more generally about problem solving and creativity and things like that. That yeah, the more we can take a bit of lateral thinking and make people realize that the innate skills that they have and the things that they enjoy have a place within this world, I think, that's going to open us up to a much bigger potential talent pool and make the sector seem much more interesting to a broader demography. So yeah, I'm all for it. I think it's a really, really smart article. I think not only does it kind of make those more straightforward connections between things like, BIM, for instance,
Mm.
project management, project planning, 3D modeling. You can see where all of those things would directly move from gaming into sector. But some of the more soft skills, I guess, that spatial awareness, for instance, and creativity, as I say, there's it's not just that this kid is good at Minecraft and therefore get them into the sector quickly, but any kid that has an interest in gaming and world building and stuff like that, with a little bit of lateral thinking, there's going to be something to interest them within construction, I think. So yeah, love it. And I hadn't realised just the extent to which Kier were kind of digitizing their offer.
Mm.
So as an outsider, I'm fascinated to see what that looks like as it develops. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, they call it naturally digital. That's what Louisa is calling it at Kier. That's what they're trying to. That's their ambition, which is it's bang on for the way the industry's going and the way we should all be looking at it. I think it's like you said. It's not just focused on that gamification, that gaming perspective. It is those softer skills, and even by the way of collaboration and communication. It, as long as these tools are used in the right way, then I'm talking from a really young age, then it's only going to benefit them, because we're not taking a step backwards. We're never going to roll back the clock. The digitization is here, and we utilize these things as adults, and those things will change by the time that our children are grown up. But nevertheless, it's it goes back to that kind of old adage of going round to your grandparents and setting up their video recorder or DVD player or internet for that matter, or switching on their phone when they can't do it. It's these people are going to have these skills that at some point in our life we probably won't have or have the capacity to know and understand. So it's important that they're part of it, and although it has to be managed carefully when they are young, and that they don't go down those deep dark rabbit holes, which we can do online, unfortunately. If managed and put those guardrails on, I can only see positive, because kids run, kids love being outside. They love getting muddy, they love doing all that kind of stuff, which is fantastic. But I think if you incorporate that digital element of those things as well, it can be really, really good. I'm not going to name any names, but there's certain apps that I let my children use, which they can draw, or they can color in, and then they can take that actual drawing and then they can put it in an AR environment, so you can see it sat next to them. If it's a person sat next to them on on their sofa, and they can see that photo and things like that. And it's just things like that that's really inspiring, that's the way technology's going, and they can see a drawing come to life that they've actually done. It's really cool.
Yeah. Well, and there's something that they're already excited. You've not had to beat them around the head with, there's a great career opportunity or there's some really exciting learning outcomes for you. It's just, it's harnessing the enjoyment that they already have for that thing and then finding a place for it. As I say, if you think of it from a sector point of view, the sheer volume of people that we currently employ and that we require, we talk about skills gap often enough, and the kind of, the numbers that we're chasing. We've done it several times on this podcast previously. But you also think about the economic, impact of the sector. It's what the government, all of these initiatives that they're doing to get things moving and to sort of back the sector and so on. They're not just doing that because it's a nice thing to do. It's because it's going to be a powerhouse that drives the rest of the economy forward. And the only way that we can do that, as I say, is by mass appeal. We have to demonstrate that we have roles for all kinds of people across the piece. And I think this is a really smart way of doing it. And I should say, there's been initiatives previously. I don't know if you come across MOBIE before, MOBIE, which is the Ministry of Building. Let me get I do this every week with acronyms. Ministry of Building, Innovation and Education. They had things like Minecraft design competitions with various London boroughs over the last couple of years, where high school students were invited to a public open space that was being redesigned. Come and actually submit your design, and the winning one would then be built, and things like that. There's I think we can do this in a non-patronizing way that doesn't bore people too much with career paths and opportunities, and just let young people find the route into sector that best suits their personality, their skill set, their current interests, and let's meet people where they are. And if where they are is gaming, again, one of the stats referenced in the article is there's an average of 20 hours. The average child games for 20 hours per week. Why would you not work with that? To your point, if there's just innate skills there that are not consciously learned, but are just part of their day-to-day sort of habits, then there's no sense in trying to steer them away from that into doing something else. Like, let's work with that and find an appropriate role. And I think with the way that the tech is evolving within the sector, one would hope that that's not going to be an issue. So yeah, it's really exciting. I think if more people can sort of get onto that mindset of meeting young people where they are and creating roles that better fit the skills that they already have and the interest they already have, then I think we'll be in a much better spot for it.
Yeah, completely with you on that one. But this all well said and done, and the good initiatives, and we know where we need to focus. But our final article kind of puts a bit more meat on the bone in terms of, for years and ever since I've known, from the 80s, all I've ever heard is that within construction, people are just getting older. The demographic is at a certain age where a lot of people are going to retire, and we're going to lose all the skills. And that has been an upward trajectory to that demographic for ever since I can remember. But our final headline actually bends that curve. So this is from the Construction Index, 2006, and it's taken from skill cards data, and that data suggests that construction's age profile is finally improving after 30 years of zero improvement, give or take, which is quite surprising, really. What's your thoughts on this one?
I would have said the same, mate. And in fairness to what you were saying earlier on just having the perception that the sector was aging, I think it is. You can't get away from that. This stat says that we've booked a trend a little bit, but we're an aging population where you can't get away from that. So construction is likely to move in line with the wider population in that respect. Several trade bodies have been out as recently as this year to say there's warnings here that we have a lot of people, to your point, that are going to age into retirement. RICS, for instance, were saying that chartered surveyors, I think the average age of their membership now is pushing 60. So that's a lot of knowledge and a lot of skills set to leave that particular part of sector. And again, we should say CSCS data is purely about on-site contracting roles. It's the sort of demonstration that you are safe to work on site. So it's not sector wholesale, but it's an encouraging stat nonetheless, and one that I think I'd have been more surprised with last year had we not done our deconstruction survey, where, again, I've spoken about it on the podcast before. For anyone that's missed that, we speak to members of the public through YouGov. We do a 2,000 person nationally representative survey every year that basically tests the public's attitudes to careers in construction. Principally, would you ever consider a career in the sector? And overwhelmingly, the answer has been sadly no. We normally get around 2/3 of respondents say that they wouldn't. That was the case last year, but the best performing demographic was the worst the sort of 2 years previous. And it was young people. That was where the biggest improvement in sentiment towards potential careers in the sector were. And we've discussed this before. There's lots of interesting sort of hypotheses as to why that might be the case and what's changed within the wider job market and the economy and everything else that's driving that. But it does seem, from everything that we've seen, again, within deconstruction, within the further education space, young people are at least willing to listen to us now. And this CSCS data is just another sort of data point to bear that out. I mean, a quarter of card holders under 30, that has to bode well, doesn't it?
Yeah, up 17% in 5 years, which is nothing to be sniffed at. It takes a fair chunk to be up 17%. They make a point of saying that they're fully aware that not everyone holds a CSCS card, but it's yet another indicator of the industry moving in a specific direction. We've spoke at length over the last few episodes about all these pockets of information and sound bites and different parts of the industry saying that there's an upturn, and then we pause it a little bit and hold the reins to, oh, hang on, they don't want to jump the gun a bit, but there's no smoke without fire, and this is yet another lead towards bringing the next generation in and bringing that age down to a reasonable level that most of a certain sector in the industry isn't going to retire within the next few years. Like you said, it's a lot of skill and knowledge to lose, and we don't want to lose it too soon. And we want people to be educated and then learn their own trade, because it's going to be, fundamentals won't change, but there will be different skills required to learn those practices and have that knowledge embedded in the new skills, the new tech, the new products we have to utilize to build, essentially. So I'd say it's a chink of light, but we'll take that light after, like I say, for decades of aging demographic within the industry. Anything that says there's a bit of a halt on that is a win in my eyes.
Yeah, for certain. Go back to the stats at the very start of this, Pete, around youth unemployment and young people not in education in general terms, and the way that has spiked as much as it has. We have the opposite in sector where we have an abundance of roles required. Again, there's a reason we talk about skills gaps so much, is that we can't deliver on the potential and promise in sector without filling those roles. And again, I should stress, while it's not exclusively about young people, it's much easier, I would suggest, to get people into sector that haven't already commenced careers in other fields and then try to get them to move across at a later date. I think if we can get people while they are malleable in that respect and are setting out on their career, then that has to make more sense. So, yeah, I think it's time for us to be confident as a sector and
Mhm.
to shout about if other sectors are struggling to create roles, and if other parts of the economy are sort of reducing headcount and so on. We are not in that position, and not just for those traditional roles, but for roles more generally, per the Louisa Finlay article. Yeah, I think that's in the current economy. I think that's a really, really positive message. We spoke last week about the size of the infrastructure pipeline. We've spoken at length about the sort of demands for house building and so on. We've got to turn those into a positive when it comes to the job market. Then look at this pipeline, look at the size of opportunity here, look at the stability and then the safety that will bring to roles. I know I'm being very sort of rose tinted here, and it's not an easy market for lots of people to navigate. But yeah, now is the time, I think, for us to really be confident and to sort of buck the wider sort of trend for
Mhm.
doom and gloom. Much like we do on this podcast, I guess, mate.
100%. That leads us very nicely on to final takeaways for this week. If you don't mind, I'll go first.
Unless you're going to steal mine, but yeah, in theory, that's fine.
Okay, yeah. So my takeaway this week is very much focus on next generation. Don't have this attitude of digital skills aren't needed. We should avoid giving them tablets and iPads and all that kind of stuff. Yes, within moderation, absolutely put those guardrails on, but give them the opportunity to build those skills around the tools and the equipment that they will need going forward, and if they're skillful in certain tech or something, encourage that, but make sure they go outside and have fun like all kids should do as well.
No, it's a good shout. I'll in the spirit of Open Doors Week, and sort of the conversation around the Louisa Finlay article. I think let's make sure we are not showing the sector in its best light, but showing as much of the sector to people as possible. I think for people that are in positions like you and I within marketing, and we all have a responsibility, but I'd say people in our kinds of roles, let's be more sort of choiceful, I guess, in the images of the sector that we project to as big an audience as possible. Yeah, 'cause I genuinely believe there is a role for everyone within the sector. We just need to allow people the space to be able to find that. So, yeah, good luck to everyone that's taking part in Open Doors Week this week. Yeah, there's lots of exciting stuff happening in the sector. We need to project that confidence and yeah, let people find a space here because Lord knows we need the numbers, we need to deliver. So yeah, let's shout about it.
Cool, excellent, great place to end. And on that note, I will bid you farewell for this week. Look forward to next week.
Yeah, normal intro. We'll carry on from here on, and I apologise profusely for my my written statement earlier.